This is the exact reason a two-time Formula One world champion, as verified by F1 historical records, faces permanent nerve damage from his own steering wheel right before the 2026 Australian Grand Prix on the Formula One 2026 season calendar. The brand new Aston Martin AMR26 was the main focus of Thursday press events in Melbourne on March 5, 2026. Fans expected Adrian Newey to unveil an aerodynamic masterpiece powered by the new Honda power unit. The reality proved entirely different when Adrian Newey grabbed the microphone and revealed a serious engineering failure. Honda's 2026 engine produces intense mechanical vibrations inside the chassis, but the rigid carbon fiber construction transfers that violent shaking directly into the steering column. The result is a steering wheel that vibrates so aggressively it damages human nerve tissue. Alonso explained that driving the car for just 25 minutes causes acute numbness in his hands, which meant the team faced an unprecedented crisis before the first practice session even began. Aston Martin designed the car to win championships. Therefore, discovering a physical danger to their drivers forced an immediate re-evaluation of their entire weekend strategy. Lance Stroll suffers an even lower tolerance threshold. As search results show, his previous wrist injuries restrict his maximum safe driving time to barely 15 laps before the shaking feels like electrocution. 58 laps of flat-out driving are required by a standard Melbourne race. Aston Martin cannot safely complete a race distance without risking irreversible hand injuries to both their drivers. News of this danger spread through the Albert Park paddock immediately, which shifted the entire conversation from aerodynamic upgrades to basic human safety protocols. The media day atmosphere shifted from excitement to pure shock when the severity of the situation became clear. Adrian Newey built his reputation on designing cars that push the absolute limits of physical engineering. As outlined in the FIA 2026 Formula One technical regulations, the 2026 rules mandated a large shift in power unit architecture, which forced Honda to redesign their battery systems completely while significantly modifying their existing internal combustion engine. This altered the resonance frequencies vibrating through the rear of the AMR26. A Formula One chassis acts like a giant tuning fork when bolted to an engine. Aston Martin engineers discovered during pre-season testing that vibrations from the Honda engine created a harmonic resonance with the chassis and the hybrid system's battery housing. The vibrations peak exactly where the driver grips the steering wheel, and that localized shaking generates forces the human body simply cannot absorb long-term. Mirrors and taillights vibrated right off the chassis during those early shakedown runs in Bahrain. The shaking destroyed battery connections repeatedly, meaning the team lost valuable data gathering hours. Newey admitted the running program requires heavy restriction to prevent permanent nerve damage to the drivers. The team attempted dampening the hybrid system battery with redesigned mounting brackets, but they acknowledged the carbon chassis acts as an amplifier, and the intense force of the Honda power unit transmits directly through the structure into the driver's hands. Finding a fix requires entirely redesigning the engine mounts or altering the chassis stiffness. Neither option exists as a quick patch during a race weekend in Melbourne. If you want the real engineering breakdown behind every major Formula One controversy this season, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. The grid changes rapidly, and our channel tracks exactly how these technical regulations affect the racing. Returning to the Aston Martin garage, the driver medical history complicates this mechanical crisis greatly. Lance Stroll shattered his wrists in a cycling accident just 3 years ago, which left his hands highly susceptible to high-frequency impacts. He told reporters the current steering wheel feedback feels like electrocuting yourself in a chair. 15 consecutive laps of absorbing those frequencies pushes Stroll to his personal limit before risking acute nerve damage to his previously injured wrists. Alonso holds a slightly higher tolerance at 25 laps maximum, but the veteran explicitly refuses to gamble his long-term health for a single race finish. Medical staff warned the team that pushing past the numbness phase guarantees physical deterioration. Sunday's Australian Grand Prix demands high-speed precision around the tight Albert Park circuit. Aston Martin confronts a mathematical impossibility given their current driver limitations. The team cannot simply ask Alonso and Stroll to push through the pain because the loss of tactile sensation prevents them from operating the complex clutch paddles and rotary switches. A driver unable to feel his fingers becomes a severe hazard at 330 kilometers per hour, which forced the race directors to monitor the situation closely. Newey stood before the media and confirmed their race weekend running remains heavily restricted. Aston Martin expects to retire both cars before the checkered flag drops, rather than risk permanent nerve damage to their drivers caused by the extreme vibrations. The irony stings the British team deeply. Telemetry data proves the AMR26 struggles with a noticeable lack of overall pace. Newey designed a genuinely fast aerodynamic platform, but the engine vibrations risk permanent nerve damage, preventing the drivers from safely completing a full race distance. The engineers must dial back the engine modes or limit stint lengths drastically. Points finishes look highly unlikely for the season opener, leaving the garage scrambling for data rather than podiums. The pit wall staff face the agonizing decision of exactly when to retire the cars during the actual broadcast. Looking beyond the immediate disaster in Melbourne reveals a brutal development war looming for the rest of the 2026 season. Honda faces intense pressure to redesign their power unit balancing shafts and vibration dampening systems at their Sakura headquarters. Altering an engine block mid-season consumes large portions of the strict cost cap budget. The aerodynamic development suffers directly because funds must divert to solving mechanical resonance issues instead of wind tunnel testing. Aston Martin heavily recruited Newey precisely to dominate this new era of regulations. But his aerodynamic brilliance means nothing if the drivers cannot physically steer the car. Complete confidence was publicly stated by Alonso regarding the engineering recovery plan. The champion understands that solving this harmonic vibration delivers a fiercely competitive racing machine. Rival teams closely watch how the governing body handles this safety concern. If Aston Martin manages to dampen the vibrations without sacrificing engine power, they could leapfrog the midfield instantly. The engineering fix likely requires a completely new steering column assembly and modified engine mounts by the time the European leg of the calendar begins. Until those parts arrive, the green cars face a difficult spring of restricted running and early retirements. This mechanical crisis establishes a dangerous precedent for the entirely new 2026 Formula One regulations. The rulemakers prioritized sustainable fuels and increased electrical power, which inadvertently forced engine manufacturers to push internal combustion limits in unpredictable ways. Aston Martin serves as the unfortunate test case for these extreme harmonic vibrations. Other teams now face the terrifying reality that their own future engine upgrades might trigger similar physical hazards for their drivers. The Drivers' Association will likely demand new safety mandates regarding high-frequency cockpit vibrations, similar to how they regulated vertical bouncing during the porpoising era of 2022. Aston Martin faces a substantial point deficit right from the start of the championship campaign. Recovering from a projected 0 points in the opening rounds requires near-perfect execution throughout the remainder of the 24-race calendar. Honda's reputation takes a temporary hit, forcing the Japanese manufacturer to prove they can solve dangerous mechanical flaws rapidly. Fans watching the Australian Grand Prix are expected to witness a highly unusual spectacle of two highly competitive cars deliberately pulling into the pits to protect their drivers from physical harm. This weekend prioritizes data collection and survival over securing championship points. The long-term health of the athletes finally takes precedence over pure lap times, changing how teams evaluate future upgrades. The Australian Grand Prix will expose exactly how Aston Martin handles their most alarming engineering failure in years. If you want to track their recovery and every other grid update this season, hit subscribe before the lights go out.